Welcome to DES Trucks. In today's video, I'm going to talk about brakes and how to save a lot of money when it comes to your brakes. These braking systems on these trucks can be quite expensive when you look at all the components involved, even on a base level. The calipers, the pads, and rotors are very expensive and very subject to premature failure based off of just these two components right here, lower and upper guide pins. So what can be done? What's the best course of action here? So what happens is, first and foremost, what happens is after a couple of years of driving, eventually your caliper pins will lose their grease, depending on the weather. In our area with a lot of salt and snow, for what we're doing with these trucks, we're plowing snow. We've seen these pins lose the grease and seize up. When that happens, you have diminished braking ability, longer stopping distances, and eventually you will have uneven wear, tons of heat going into your caliper, and the seals on the caliper starting to fail, the rubber seals. Once this caliper gets overheated, you are now dealing with a situation where the caliper might need to be replaced, the rotor, the pads, all that stuff prematurely. So we just looked at a truck with 60,000 miles, and the pins weren't quite out of grease yet. They were starting to get a little bit low on grease. We greased the pins at that time, but the pads on that truck with 60K, the pads were still pretty good. And that just goes to show that that if you prevent the pins from seizing on you, which eventually they will, then you will in turn get the most out of your entire braking system instead of having to replace very expensive components, bleeding the system, changing the rotors. Once you have run out on the rotors, it's better on these big trucks, in my opinion, to go ahead and just replace the rotor instead of turning the rotor. On this F450, in order to take the rotor off of the rear, you have to pull the axle out and you have to take the bearing apart. It's a very expensive procedure. And on the front, you have the hub extenders. It's a lot of work involved. It's a very expensive brake job. So with Super Duties and particularly dualies, it's a very, very important thing to make sure you get the most out of your brake pads, your rotors, your calipers, all that good stuff. So what is the most important, easiest thing to do to make sure you keep up your brake system from the base level? There's more obviously involved with maintaining your braking system. Every couple years, really, to do it by the book and to do it right, every couple years you should be flushing the brake fluid through the system. But on the base level, in order to really protect this system, one of the most overlooked things, easiest things to do, is keep up on your guide pins. What I'm recommending after messing with this system now a couple of times, having greased a few guide pins, having broken them down to figure it out, the best thing to do is to get underneath the truck, obviously on a level surface with the wheels chalked and in a safe place, but get underneath the truck and take a visual inspection of the brakes. On this F450, we can see the caliper right here. It kind of protrudes out away from the tire a little bit. As you can see, it's sticking out. You can see the guide pins, and what I recommend is, before taking anything apart, this is kind of something I thought about because the last one I did, I took it apart and pulled everything out. But before even doing that, you can really see the condition of your guide pins before you take anything apart. So what I'm gonna start recommending is just get underneath the truck and visually inspect the boots. Make sure they're not torn. Make sure they're not damaged. But then from here, you really can't see. Typically your boots are going to be good and you really can't see what's inside. From here, you could just peel this back a little just to visually confirm that you have grease in there. You could take maybe a flathead screwdriver or something. I'm going to try to do this by hand. But yeah, you can just pull this back over the ear and you can visually see that, yeah, there's grease. Also, probably, now that I'm here thinking about it, it's probably a good idea to clean this off because you don't want to introduce any of the dirt that's outside of the boot. You don't want to really introduce that dirt into the boot. So maybe do a quick spritz of brake clean beforehand. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and just clean up the outside a little bit while everything's sealed up. I don't want brake clean getting into the grease area because it will break down the grease, but it's all sealed up. Just cleaning up the outside of it because this one actually is really quite dirty. But just give that a quick wipe. It actually seals itself right now in these little grooves. But let's go ahead and pull this back just a hair now that it's dry from the brake clean. And taking a screwdriver in here and just, without tearing it up, visually looking in here and just peeking in there just a little, and I can see that there's plenty of grease in this truck because this is a pretty new truck, so that's to be expected. So before tearing this apart, which I really didn't think of it like this the first time I was messing with this, I actually tore it apart and freaking greased everything. That being said, from a quick, easy inspection point of view, just come under here, do a quick inspection, and to see where we are. From here, we can see our pads. We can go in here and actually physically see the condition of the pads through this inspection hole in the caliper. We can tell what our pads look like, and we can see our grease. We can kind of squeeze this just a little and audibly hear the grease inside of it. That might even just be enough in itself. You can hear that that's greasy in there. You can rotate this thing a little and feel that the grease is still operational in there. That could just be enough in itself, where if you rotate it and you can tell that it's just bone dry inside of here, then you know that maybe it's time to actually pull this apart and grease this system up. That way you can get the most out of your brake system. Now, as far as greasing the calipers, this is the product that I'm using. This is CRC, high performance ceramic fortified brake system grease. It has an extreme temperature range from negative 50 degrees to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And one of the things to really look out for when getting a brake pin grease is make sure that it's what does that say? EPDM and nitrate rubber compatible. That's very important. Sometimes people are ordering brake pin grease from Amazon and it's not rated for the rubber. Although I think they've kind of cleaned it up a little because of negative reviews and stuff, because guys were buying this stuff and they'd go ahead and grease up everything, and then after a year the rubber would deteriorate on their guide pins. So people were kind of calling it out in the comments and the reviews on Amazon. And last time I looked at Amazon, I didn't really see that as much based on just 1 year of just trial and error. So I think for the most part it's been addressed through all the negative reviews and people. And typically when you get your brake pin grease, it's typically been a lot better. That being said, just double check and make sure that it's EPDM and nitrate rubber compatible. This is what I'm running. Super high performance. It's literally the best product, highly rated product that I could find. Not saying that the other products aren't good, but just make sure that it's a really good product. You could use the OEM product on your Fords that Ford recommends. They use a dual purpose dielectric grease, which is dielectric and it's brake pen grease. I believe that is a good grease to use and it works, but it will eventually run out, and probably so will this. It's hard to say if this is necessarily better. It's going to take years of testing to really know if this is better than the Ford product, but I do know that the Ford grease has failed and this hasn't yet. So uh, it's not bad to use the Ford dielectric. I'm not going to say that I won't use it. I would definitely use it, but the main thing is that you're getting in there and making sure that these pins don't seize up before the pads, because you can get a lot of life out of your brake pads, a lot of towing, a lot of driving, a lot of just work out of the pads and rotors before they have to get changed. You might get 100K out of your pads. The system will just, the way these systems are built, the materials, the rotors, the pads, all that, they can really last a good while before an overhaul is required, before the pads and rotors are required. But these pins can have issues before and cause you to have to replace components prematurely. So when you look at the back of this product, it says it meets Japanese rubber compatibility standard JISK with EPDM and nitrate rubber. So that's why I'm using this one. I do believe the Ford product, if you get the Ford brake pen grease, I believe it's compatible as well. I don't know if it says it on the container or not. I gotta look. I do have some somewhere. I gotta find it. But this or the OEM Ford stuff or anything that's rated appropriately, just make sure that you're reading it and making sure that it's actually rated for what we are doing brake system. I wouldn't just use any type of grease, but I do believe this is going to be a little bit higher performance, but that could just be my opinion or it could be fact. I don't know. It's hard to say. We need to really keep running it to know. But what I like to do when I service these pins is I go ahead and take the wheel off of the vehicle with the dually. That's quite a bit of work, but take the wheel off, go ahead and remove the calipers and take the pins out. In order to get these pins out of here, you have to remove the caliper. The pins will not come off until you've taken the caliper off of the vehicle. In order to take the caliper off the vehicle, you have to take the wheel off the vehicle. So it does turn out to be a few hours worth of work. Once the wheel and caliper are off of the vehicle, I will come around here and spray brake clean into this cavity, and then I will take my compressed air, blow out the cavity real good, blow out the cavities real good, clean up the pins with brake clean and compressed air, then reapply a thin coating of grease. More is not better, but just enough. Maybe get a little bit of pushback from the pin, but not too much. And then from there, reinstall the caliper with either new pads and rotors or just with the old pads and old rotor. If the pads and rotors are still good, just keep them all matched up to where they were and reinstall. And yeah, that's just a good preventative maintenance. It's not bad to do it if you're at, say, 60K miles and the pins are just starting to kind of, I mean, look how much grease is in here. This is a new truck, but if you can imagine at 60,000 miles, you're not going to be working with as much grease as you were. So I don't believe there's enough room to put this grease in here without taking off the caliper. If you were trying to maneuver this, I don't believe that's going to work. I think you have to actually take it apart, clean it up, and at that point you might as well clean it up and actually reapply the caliper pin grease. So that's my recommendation. After having these trucks, after having one of these systems on me, seize up in a very low mileage situation, but a lot of work, a lot of a couple years of plowing snow. Maybe I'm a lot more extreme, but I'm willing to bet that a lot of you guys out there too, who just drive these trucks, end up having these caliper pins seize up. So anyway, guys, this is our 23 F450. This has kind of been our main piece on the channel here, but we also have a 19 F350. And while we're on the topic, I actually figured let's just pop underneath this 19 and take a look at these pins, because this truck's got a year of plowing and salting on it. So as I squeeze this pin here, I can tell that it's a little bit drier. Most definitely a little bit drier than the other truck. I would say that it's probably about time to go ahead and grease these pins after a good year of plowing snow. It's also interesting to see how much smaller these brakes are. Let's go ahead and peel this up and see. Maybe it's easier to use the hand here. Alright. So, got a little access here. So, I was able to get the tip of the screwdriver in there. There's a little bit of grease in there. It's still there, but it's not as plentiful as it was on the new truck. So I'll probably go ahead while this truck is still good. The pads are still excellent condition. Oh, pads are still good. So what I'll do, I'll go ahead and yank all the tires off, rotate them. Go ahead and pull the calipers off, leave the pads in place, and I'll go ahead and grease these pins at the same time that I change the oil and everything on this truck. And with that will be probably an annual thing with this one, or maybe every other year. We'll see. We'll have to really see how that ceramic stuff is. Maybe that ceramic stuff gets done. Ooh, look at that thing sitting in the shop. Maybe that ceramic gets in there and that's good enough. But anyway, my name is Sean. This is DS Trucks. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully this video was helpful to you. And yeah, hope to see you soon. Over and out.